I'd like to call the February 13, 2023 Planning Commission meeting to order. Please stand and join me in saying the pledges of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to welcome you all out tonight. Good to see so many citizens out joining us tonight. Glad to have you. All right, we'll move down through our agenda. Item number 2, additions or deletions. First, let me ask staff, are there any additions or deletions? Okay, then I have a, it's not an addition, it's not a deletion, but it's an item I'd like for the commissioners to consider. On our agenda, the last workshop item, PW 23-02-02, the design guidelines updates for Highway 54 Overlay District. Commissioners, as you've, I am sure, all read and reviewed, a lot of material, a lot of information there. And my sense is that we would have a difficult time trying to get through that entire thing tonight. It's a lot of information, and it's going to take some time. So, commissioners, if you are approving, what I'd like to do with that item is tonight have a brief overview by staff of that item. Then we come back in 2 weeks and have a more thorough discussion, because as of right now, there's nothing else on the agenda. Come back and have a more thorough discussion about that, where we can take our time, have staff really walk us through it, and also the citizens will have an opportunity for input in a thorough way, as opposed to feeling that it's the last agenda item, and we would probably struggle getting through all of that. So if you're okay with that, I'd recommend, again, just a brief discussion by staff tonight, and then we come back in 2 weeks and really go through that. Is that okay with everyone?
Yes.
Okay. Then for the public, if anyone's here for that, again, understand we'll just have a brief discussion from the staff tonight, and then we'll come back at our next meeting and really do a comprehensive discussion on those guidelines.
Okay.
All right, very good. Then item number 3, announcements and reports. I'd just like to, as usual, welcome Councilman Clint Holland. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it. And I also like to welcome our Deputy City Manager, Justin Strickland. Good to see you as well, sir. Any other announcements or reports?
No, sir.
All right, very good. Then we'll move to item number 4, approval of the minutes. Commissioners, all of you were given the meeting minutes from January the 23rd, 2023. Are there any changes, additions, corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, the chair will entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes from January 23rd, 2023.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the Planning Commission minutes from January 23rd, 2023 as submitted.
Is there a second?
A second.
Any question on the motion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposes? The ayes have it. Very good. There are no old agenda items, and we'll move on to new agenda items, starting with item 23-02-01, conceptual site plan for Take 5 Oil, 2714 Highway 54. We'll turn it over to staff for the report.
All right, good evening, everybody. As he said, this is a proposal for a Take 5 oil change facility at 2714 Highway 54. The parcel, which is shown in the blue outline, I got a point over here, enlarged here in this circle. It is zoned GC, General Commercial, as well as COR, which is the Corridor Overlay District. How do I make that go away? Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. Oh, there we go. Okay. Stephen, why is it doing that? How do I make it a pointer instead of a circle? Okay. All right. Next door to the west, we have a city-owned open space parcel. And to the east, this light purple color is zoned LI for light industrial. And this parcel is the extra space storage property, which is accessed off of Fulton Court here. Currently, there is a 6,000 square foot automotive repair and service center located on the site, which is a business that's been around for many years. The property, now we can go to the next slide. There we go. The property is quite narrow, about 120 feet in width. It is fairly small, 0.88 acres. The building setbacks are 30 feet in the front, which is a building and parking setback. On the side, it's 10 feet, and in the rear, 20 feet. The building being proposed is 2,100 square feet with 9 parking spaces. Since the parcel is in the corridor overlay district, the development will have to comply with the Georgia 54 West design guidelines, in addition to the zoning and the land development ordinances. These requirements include, but aren't limited to, site layout and building placement, architectural design, landscaping, and site lighting. An architectural review will be required by the Planning Commission. So let's talk about building placement. The Take 5 oil change offers a 5-minute oil change service as you stay in your car and drive through the building, which requires plenty of room for stacking of cars as they wait for their turn. The narrow lot presents quite a challenge to make this work efficiently while still complying with the design guidelines. So the building here is proposed with the long side parallel to Georgia 54 and close to the front of the property, which will allow cars to enter the property and stack up here behind the building as they line up and wait for their turn. And they will be hidden from view from Georgia 54. And then there's just enough room in front of the building to pull through after they get their oil change and exit the property. The remaining area out front will be used to meet landscape requirements. And so staff feels the building placement meets the intent of the design guidelines that some buildings should front Georgia 54 with parking to the side and rear, while at the same time creates a successful situation for the business model. So let's move on to site access and parking. Currently, there's a curb cut for this lot, as you can see in the aerial photograph over here. This is the lot in the existing building. There's a curb cut here, and right here there's a curb cut for the city-owned open space parcel. At the request of GDOT, a single shared curb cut is being proposed at the adjoining property line. This one right here. Big brand new curb cut with a deceleration lane. So it'll be a right in, right out, right in, right out curb cut. The design guidelines require curb cuts to be located to allow shared access from Georgia 54 into adjoining parcels. So this proposal would meet that requirement. And any work that's proposed in the right-of-way will have to be approved by GDOT. Let's see, per the design guidelines, once again, vehicular circulation between parcels shall be required by interparcel access to minimize traffic on public and private streets. And internal access drives shall be designed to connect adjoining parcels. So the plan shows 2 connections. We have a connection here into the city parcel, if future access is necessary. And also here at the back of the parcel, we have access, should it become necessary, to the extra space storage parcel, which really is not necessary currently, but if that parcel were to redevelop, then we could make that connection. Or that connection, we wouldn't make it, the city, but it would be there. let's see. So the general placement of parking in the corridor overlay district should be to the side and rear of the building. And while not many parking spaces are needed, because, again, sit in your car while you get your oil changed, they do have some parking spaces here in the rear with just one space in the front, and this is an ADA accessible parking space as required, and it is near the entry point to the building, right here, with the necessary crosswalk. And it will be required, per the guidelines, to be screened with either a berm and or landscaping that is 36 inches in height. Again, so the parking required is, the minimum amount of parking required is 9, which is what they're showing. Now, there's a 30-foot, in addition to that 30-foot building and parking setback, that is also a required landscape buffer. So that is meeting the requirement. And staff is of the opinion that this proposed plan meets the city ordinances and the Georgia 54 West design guidelines and recommends approval of this conceptual site plan for Take 5 oil change.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Is the applicant here? Would you please state your name and who you represent at the microphone? And let us know if there's anything additional that you'd like to add.
Sure. My name is Teresa Curry with Axis Companies. I'm the engineer for the applicant, and staff did a great job presenting our site plan. We will be demoing the existing building that kind of sits in a hole. I don't know if you're familiar with this location. And building a new building that meets your overlay requirements. We're going to fill the site and bring it up a little bit closer to grade. And then, of course, a new curb cut with the decel lane, which will be safer than the conditions out there today.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And you may want to stay there in case there are questions
Sure.
from the commissioners. So, this gentleman here, did he have anything to add?
No, my name is Javin. I'm part of the ownership group here. So thank you again for a nice presentation. We're just very excited to bring Take 5 to Peachtree City. We are currently running 8 locations. 9th one in Noonan is under construction. This will be number 10. And with y'all's grace and permission, we're hoping to bring one more to Peachtree City, and this will be our 10th location. It will be the most expensive location out of the 10, so I'm still very excited to bring this here. So if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Sure, thank you, thank you. All right, so let's open it up to questions from the commissioners. Commissioner Rittenhouse, do you have any questions?
Yeah, to start off, you know, that is a pretty, I want to say hectic, but that's a pretty hectic area right there, especially now with the car wash going in down over the hill from you. Just trying to get an idea of sense, you know, I know that auto repair place has been there for a number of years and kind of minimal cars in and out. What typically on a weekday, weekend basis trips do you typically have or propose or I guess kind of foresee for this location?
Car count wise?
Yeah.
So definitely depends on the location. We're expecting this location to be busier, but as mentioned in the presentation, it's more of a 10-minute oil change, stay in your car. It's not a junkyard, which it is now. You know, you go through that lot, there's like 30 cars back there. We're gonna demolish the building, have a little bit more ease of traffic flow. And the key part of this business is, you know, the front of the location is gonna be towards the street. All the cars are gonna be hidden behind. So the car stacking is important, the way we've laid it out. But typically about 30 to 40 cars a day. And if you calculate 10 minutes per car, it's really not gonna showcase any backing of traffic or anything. The other thing that we're adding is a decel lane that Teresa might be able to touch base on with her expertise, but it's gonna be a right in, right out right there, so I think that's gonna help with the traffic flow as well.
Appreciate that. Yeah, and I have more of a comment on the decel and then the exit lane. That's
Sure.
not really a question, so we'll
Sure.
do that.
Commissioner Hamner, any questions?
No questions.
Commissioner Chris?
So you said this was going to be one of your busier locations. What does that mean for the amount of people in and out on an average day?
On an average day, I would say about between 35 to 40, busier day 50. We're able to get 80, 90 cars in and out with our car count stacking. So we're able to stack 5 cars in the back. So customers are waiting behind the building. They're not waiting in line or, coming in or anything like that. So the way we have it designed, we're able to stack that many cars. We're not anticipating more than 2 or 3 car stack, but we have room for 6 car stack the way, and that's on our side of the property, directly right behind our building.
And how many employees do you anticipate for like a busy location like this?
So if it's about 30, 40 cars, we have a minimum of 8 employees. Now, as we get busier, things like that, 12, 14, up to 16, 18 if we need, but I anticipate between 8 and 12.
Okay, and you currently have 9 parking spots. I'm only seeing 5, 6, 7, 8 with the handicap spot in front. Where's the 9th one?
Did I miss one?
Yeah, the site plan shows 8. If 9 is required, we'll add a third next to that bay of 2.
Yeah, and if you're anticipating 8 to 12 employees, I think from my perspective, I would like to see 8 to 12 parking spots. Otherwise, I don't know where in that location they would be parking. So from my perspective, I think you should have at least a number of parking spots that, for people that will be working there.
That's a good point.
There is a maximum in the overlay district, a maximum ratio, and for this lot, it would be 13, so.
Yeah, I mean, so with 8 to 12 employees, I think 13 probably is a good number. That would be what I would recommend. But nothing further from me.
Sure. Well, but you raise an interesting point, though. I mean, if you got 5 employees there at one time, then there's going to be a parking problem unless one of them is walking or or some other transportation.
Well, that's a good point right there, sir. Our schedule is kind of spread out. So even with our busiest store having 12, 14 employees at one time, we have 5 or 6 employees working, so.
Okay, that's fair. Commissioner Johnston, any questions?
That was actually my question about the parking, because I couldn't find the other one either. What will
Sorry
your-
about that.
What will your hours be?
During the week, it's 7 to 7, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And on Sunday, we do 9 to 6
Okay.
hours of operation.
Okay, yeah, I don't have any further questions.
And Commissioner Reeves, any questions?
So, I'm just a little curious. 30 cars a day. What is that based off of? Is that based off one of your other store locations that you have?
Yeah, on average, and also based on Take 5 numbers. So Take 5 is a franchise. They have over 700 locations. Just the average of those numbers, not just our locations.
Okay. I'm curious, was there some sort of preliminary study or something that you did to determine whether or not there was a need for a facility like this at the area that you're going to put it?
So they do base it off traffic flow and things like that, but also it's already an auto shop, which they do high volume, but it's more so of a full service auto shop. Take 5 only does oil changes primarily, and we do small things like check your air filters, cabin filters, wipers, things like that.
Okay. And you say your hours of operations are 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. During that time span, how many employees do you have on staff at any given time?
So typically, just based on the stores that we run right now, we have at least 2 openers, 2 closers. We always want to have somebody there with somebody else. We don't want somebody there on their own. So, just for safety reasons as well, but also our policy and procedures to work on a car, we need to have a second set of eyes on the whole process. Sometimes these customers, that's their most prized possession, so we want to make sure that there's a second set of eyes, second set of hands readily available.
And last question, is there a manager there at all times?
Yes, always. There's always a manager on duty. We have a manager, it's required to be corporate trained. We send them to Charlotte for a number of weeks to get corporate certified. We also have 2 assistant store managers per store and also lead techs. So somebody that's validated through the system will always be there.
Thank you.
All right, and Commissioner Reeves, you asked the question I was going to ask, and that was how do you determine to have this kind of business, this location? I'm always curious about how folks decide what business they want to locate within Peachtree City and why. So you asked that question. I'm glad you did. All right, let's move on to comments then from commissioners, and we'll start with, if there are any, we'll start with Commissioner Kriz. Any comments?
I'm just still of the opinion that there needs to be more parking and there needs to be an accurate representation. If you're saying 9 spaces, I think we should see 9 spaces prior to approval. But I still think this should be more than 9. That's it.
Sure. Commissioner Hamner.
No major comments other than this is definitely an improvement over what's there already, so excited for that.
And Commissioner Rittenhour.
Sure, two comments. One, I was going to ask if you were going to change the grade, because that does sit down over the hill a bit, and having in and out right there trying to come up over top of that I know has been problematic for people as I've been going through there. The other comment is more of a concern. I know this probably falls upon GDOT more than anyone else, but not as much as the deceleration lane, but the exit lane coming back out ties directly into the deceleration lane for Huddleston. That's a bit of a concern, I guess, from a traffic standpoint on my part. Just how it is with people coming out of there, people coming up the hill, getting ready to go ahead and make that right turn onto Huddleston. Very short distance for those cars to basically integrate, and then to get back out of that, back onto the highway right there. So again, to me, it's a GDOT issue with their highways, but it is a concern from my side.
Thank you. Commissioner Johnston, any comments?
No other comments than what's already been stated.
And Commissioner Reeves?
Yes, I would fully agree with the parking situation. In addition, I'm a firm believer of drawings accurately depicting exactly what you're going to do, because I know there's oftentimes so many revisions, So it would be great if we could have the drawings exactly exhibit the 8 parking spaces or whatever it actually is.
I think that was partly my fault. Sorry.
On that note, I'm just trying to think whether or not we would feel comfortable with seeing a new drawing with the additional or the required parking.
I would like to remind everybody that this is actually a conceptual site plan, that
Oh,
there will be
right.
a final site plan that staff reviews, and if you have any conditions.
We can
or-
add it to it, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, so why don't we do that then, and thank you for that reminder, Robin, absolutely. So, Commissioners, you can add your desire to the motion that we're about to take, if you're so inclined. But at this point, I'll then entertain a motion for item number 23-02-01, a conceptual site plan for Take 5 Oil at 2714 Highway 54 West. Is there such a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I
Yes.
make a motion that we approve the conceptual site plan with the exception that the additional parking spaces will be noted on the final site plan.
So, second to that motion?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? Then all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposes? The ayes have it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
New agenda item 23-02-02, conceptual site plan for Peachtree Cardiology at 100 McWilliams Drive. We'll turn over to staff.
All right. This next proposal is for a medical office building at 100 McWilliams Drive, which is at the intersection of Williams Drive and Highway 54. The parcel is outlined in blue.
I think you
Let's check.
meant 74. I do it all the time.
I'm so sorry. Highway 74. North of 54, in fact, north of the lower Kedron Drive here, right here, outlined in blue. It is zoned OI, office institutional, and it is bordered on the south side by another office OI parcel, and to the east by a GR6 parcel that is a residential parcel. The property is currently undeveloped and it's 100% wooded. It adjoins another undeveloped lot to the south, and on the east there is the Beechwood subdivision. Being located on a major thoroughfare, an architectural review by the Planning Commission will be required. Skip over here to the site plan. The parcel is a little over an acre. A 5,000 square foot medical office building is being proposed with 25 parking spaces. 20 spaces are required, and the maximum amount of permanent off-street parking spaces shall not exceed 125% of the required amount. So the 25 spaces being proposed is that 125% maximum of the required amount. The business owner anticipates that overflow parking may be required in the future, and the plan shows an area for future overflow parking down here on the south end. And if needed, it will have to be pervious pavers in the future. Why won't that go away? Sorry. There is no multi-use path close enough to this project site, so a connection will not be required to that. Let's talk about landscape buffers. So the property abuts Highway 74, which is classified as an arterial highway. And per the land development ordinance, there's a tree save buffer required, and the typical amount is 60 feet. The buffer requirement may be reduced from 60 feet to either 50 feet or 40 feet if additional landscaping is provided. The applicant is requesting a buffer reduction from 60 feet to 40 feet. If approved, the developer will be required to install, at a minimum, an additional 20% of the caliper inches of trees required for the entire site by the landscape ordinance. If the total amount of caliper inches cannot feasibly be planted on the site, the developer will be required to contribute to the city's tree fund. No more than 50% of the total required canopy and understory trees may be met through this alternative compliance method. As you can see, it's a very small site, and so this is the reason they are asking for this reduction. And the other thing that was required on this property, which would have made development very difficult, is a transitional yard between lots of dissimilar zoning districts. So the office district adjacent to the residential zoning district. You can see the residential lots over here backing up to this property. So, dang it, sorry. Prior to coming in for conceptual site plan approval, the applicant did seek a variance from the city council for the transition yard, and that was approved. With the following conditions. I'll try to be brief and just let you know what the conditions of that approval was. Additional evergreen landscaping will need to be added between the parking lot and the adjacent residential lots to provide a heavy visual buffer. Site lighting fixtures on the office parcel will be a maximum of 3 feet in height, so they will be very low and they'll be full cutoff. Number 3, a public access path public access and path easement shall be preserved through the rear 75 feet of the lot. So to give you an idea, where's the 75-foot line is this line right here. So all this area between here and here will be preserved for access and a future path. I've got to learn how to use this darn thing. And let's see, the purpose of the easement shall be for future potential connection of the path network from McWilliams Drive to Kedron Drive. And finally, the parking lot shall be designed to provide future access to the adjacent undeveloped lot to the south. You can see there at the south, I'm afraid to touch this. Told you. Future, right here, you probably knew where I was going. Future access to the parcel to the south. Again, making it easy to adjoin the parcel to the south and keep traffic off of 74. Thank you. I'm almost done now. Okay, and with that, staff is of the opinion that the proposed plan meets the city ordinances and the variance approval conditions, and recommends approval of the conceptual site plan with buffer reduction to 40 feet for Peachtree Cardiology at 100 McWilliams Drive.
Thank you. Is the applicant here? Please come to the microphone and state your name and who you represent.
Hey, my name is Reed Allman. I'll be the, the civil engineer on the project. I'm with Integrated Science and Engineering. I'll start with thanking Laura for the presentation. I think she got everything, hit all the high points, but we're really here to answer any questions y'all may have. I think the concept plan, we agree with all the conditions set forth in the conditions of the variance, and so they should all be reflected in this latest concept plan. So again, we're just here for any public questions or anything like that.
All right, very good, thank you. Then we'll start with questions from commissioners. Commissioner Johnston, any questions?
I do not have any questions.
Commissioner Reeves?
No.
Commissioner Rittenhour?
No questions.
Commissioner Hamner?
No questions.
And Commissioner Kriz?
No questions.
And I'll make it unanimous. All right, so then we'll move to comments, and we'll start on with Commissioner Johnston again. Any comments?
No comments. I mean, always excited to have another medical office close by, so we don't have to go to Fayetteville or Noonan. So glad to see that.
Commissioner Reeves?
I did that.
Okay. Commissioner Rittenhour?
I think everything that I probably would have said has already been picked up in the conditions approved by council already. I think the most important thing, of course, is, the buffer, maintaining that with the residential, and of course, then the lighting is another important part from that standpoint. So I think that's, like, again, all been taken care of with the council approval of the variances. So that's everything.
Very good. Commissioner Hamner?
No comments.
And Commissioner Kriz?
No comments.
Yeah, I do want to go back for a second, just ask a question that I just thought about. So you have area for additional parking. Just out of curiosity, how do you determine growth for a medical office building so that, so I see there's space for additional parking if you would need it, but how does one determine, well, we might grow in a year or two for this medical practice? How do you determine that?
At this time, we don't have plans for needing them. It was mainly since we were adding that connection over to the other parcel, is we're just showing that area as potential parking if that came about. But that's really it.
Okay. All right, very good, thank you. All right, then the chair will entertain a motion for conceptual, item number 23-02-02, conceptual site plan for Peachtree Cardiology at 100 McWilliams Drive. Is there such a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I propose that we approve new agenda item 23-02-02 as submitted.
Second? Is there a
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? Then not, if all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposes? Oh, the ayes have it. Thank you very much.
Thank y'all.
All righty, we'll move on to workshop items, and our first one is PW 23-02-01, a rezoning request for 1116 Robinson Road from agriculture AR to R43, one family residential. And we'll turn it over to staff for the presentation.
Thank you. I'm going to give you an overview of the request, and then I guess if there's any additional questions, the applicant might be able to respond to those.
Sure.
The property is located on the southeast end of the city, as you can see on the map here, and it's highlighted in the yellow. It is one of the last remaining agricultural reserve lots in the city. In fact, there are 3 just to the north of that, and I think there may be one on the very north side of the city, and that's it. So the applicant is requesting to rezone the property from AR to R43. The end result of what they're requesting is a 4-lot subdivision. And the reason each AR and R43 both require a minimum 1-acre lot size. And so the difference is, or why they're asking for the R43 zoning district, is because the AR has a minimum frontage along a road that is greatly exceeds, it's 150 feet, and so they would not be able to get the 4 lots, whereas the R43 allows this, we'll call it flag lot design, allows a minimum of a 40-foot right-of-way frontage. And so that is why they're asking for the R43. The future land use for the property is single-family low. R43 does comply with the request, and as you can see, it is surrounded by R43. Staff is recommending that some conditions, and that these actually relate to the comprehensive plan, which are noted in your memo, but we highlighted 4 comprehensive plan policies that could be addressed through certain conditions of approval, if that is what is recommended. First is to protect the single-family neighborhood character. What we're suggesting here, let's see, is to flip the setback requirements. So typically, your rear would have a 30-foot and your front would have a 50-foot. But as you can see, on these rear flag lots, their front is down here, really. And so we're suggesting that if these are flipped so that there's a 50-foot rear and a 30-foot front, they can still get a building envelope in here, but further set back from the lot that they are backed up to in the estates. The second is that encourage the high-quality building materials to reduce long-term maintenance. There's a condition of approval that the house be sided with brick, stone, or cementitious siding. The third policy for the comp plan is to encourage the preservation of trees. This lot, and I apologize, we don't have a good aerial of this. You can sort of see it through here. It actually may be better to be seen. You can see there's not that many trees along the front of this lot, but there is a good amount in the rear. And when I did some exploring, this particular property had required to have a 25-foot landscape buffer on it. And I thought that that would be a good policy to continue around the edge of this so that there's a 25-foot undisturbed buffer easement that's granted to the city so that they don't remove the trees during construction. So they would have a 50-foot building setback, but that first 25 feet of it would be completely undisturbed. And then the last policy that's reflected in the conditions is to continue limiting the driveway access to these collector arterial roads like Robinson is, which is what they are doing. And I know we're not talking about the variance tonight because there are 2 variances that are associated with this request, and those variances skip directly to council. But it is a package, and it helps understand the variances. A typical subdivision would require that a 50-foot easement be given to the city, and instead they're proposing that it's a 50-foot easement stay with the property, and that's so that they have enough land to get the 4 lots. Strictly speaking, from a maintenance or from an organization, from city, it is better for us to have the easement because then we have the rights to use it however we want, but then we don't have the responsibilities of maintaining those trees, which with 3,800 acres in the city, that can be quite a bit. And then the other is the shared driveway variance that they'll be presenting at the city council meeting. So, staff has presented those conditions of approval that are listed. I'll go ahead and get those in for the record, that if you all recommend approval, we recommend these conditions. Proof of suitable soils for septic tanks. Hydrology study for each lot required with the final plat submittal. The 50-foot access easement should be dedicated to the city, and the responsibility of maintenance of those trees shall be maintained by the property owner. Homes shall conform to the minimum size requirements of the R43 zoning district, which is at least 1,500 square feet, and shall be sided with long-wearing materials such as brick, stone, or cementitious siding. Rear lots of 1 and 4 shall have an undisturbed 25-foot landscape buffer along the property lines adjacent to the estates. And those rear lots 1 and 4 shall have the 30-foot front setback adjacent to lots 3 and 2, and the 50-foot rear setback adjacent to the estates. Thank you.
Okay, so let me review the protocol for the workshop. This is a workshop. And by the way, Robin, you said, should we recommend approval? And you know,
I'm getting ahead of the horse. Yes,
yeah,
you're right.
Yeah. That's okay. So for the workshop, for those who are here, this body will not be recommending approval or not. What we'll do is we will allow the public comment, we'll have comment, and then hopefully there is a sentiment one way or another. That sentiment then gets passed on to city council. That's how the workshop works. So everyone who's here for or against will have an opportunity to speak. Commissioners will have an opportunity to speak and ask questions of the applicant. And then again, the sentiment, overall sentiment, is what gets passed to council. At least that's how we're operating right now. Anyway, so what I'll ask is for the applicant to come to the microphone, identify themselves, and then we'll start with those who may be here or to speak for or against this particular workshop item. So is the applicant here or someone representing the applicant? Are they here? No? Okay. Okay, well, that's unusual, but that's okay. So then what we'll do is we'll open it up to the public, and let me, those who are here to speak in favor of this particular item, can I see a show of hands of those who are here in support of this workshop item? Okay, we'll let the record reflect there's none, no, at least no one here represented. All right, so is there anyone here who would like to speak against this particular item? There's several of you, okay. Then let's start, again, when you come to the microphone, please identify who you are and where you live, and we'll give you 3 to 5 minutes to make your comments, and hopefully that will be sufficient. The gentleman here in the front row, why don't we start with you?
Good evening, my name's Keith Larson. I live at 509 Plancier Place. I do not live on Robinson Road, but I'm familiar with this property. I recommend that the guidance be put on this action, that the property owner could divide the property into another lot within the current zoning, so it wouldn't require rezoning. But if there was a rezoning, no more than 2 additional lots. So that would be no degradation of any green space, either for the city easement. There should be no change to this standard for the exception, so this person can make more profit off dividing this property line. We're talking about maintaining a neighborhood character and standard. There should be no changes on any easement or green space setback or trees. We should preserve the trees. And so that, I'm just as clear as the top, and I won't take any more of your time. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Yeah, come right in.
Hi, I'm Steve Profeta. We live at 210 Dartmouth, which is the property that is immediately behind lots 1 and 4, that full length of the property. Okay? When we moved to Peachtree City in 1991, we took a lot of time in determining where we would live. Okay? And there were a lot of opportunities, a lot of choices, a lot of brand new choices. Okay? The estates, that community there, things that we liked were, number one, the size of the lots. Even at that time, there were not a lot of lots available in Peachtree City that were at least an acre in size. Most of them were much smaller. We liked the size of the lots. We liked the style of the homes. We liked the consistency of the style of the homes. We liked the natural areas within the entire neighborhood. Okay? So that led us to finally move there. And we've enjoyed it for over 30 years. The way that this drawing sets up with shoehorning 4 lots into this piece of property, especially the 2 back pieces, which are part of these flag lots, by putting those in there in that style, to me, will not be consistent with the aesthetics of the estates as it currently sits. Now, granted, the current house and garage that sits on there doesn't fit the aesthetics as well. However, from where I live, which is the closest lot, I can't even see them. I can barely make out parts of white structure of the garage and house in the winter, but in the summer, I can't see them at all. So there is no impact at all. And this concern has to do with the diminishing of the value of my property. Okay, and that's just one aspect from a selfish motive. Number 2 has to do with health concerns. Okay, now the 2 back lots are part of these flag lots. And I'm concerned that with the requirement to have well and septic, the lots have to be of a size of at least 1 acre. Now, if you have flag lots with a good portion of the area taken up by what I'll call the flag poles, those back lots don't have nearly the size or acreage that a normal, call it a normal 1 acre lot would have. So where are we going to put the septic system? Where are we going to put the well? And I know there are requirements for distances, et cetera. But if you look at where that garage currently sits, okay, from where that garage sits to our property is a downgrade. It slopes, okay, from west to east into our property, okay? And right now, when we get heavy rainfalls, there is, I'll say, unengineered streams that flow, okay? They flow down into our property, and then they flow north through Vinegar's property into, I'll say, an engineered runoff stream, okay? So if there is going to be a situation where we have 2 septic systems in the back of those properties, and I'm just assuming in the back of those properties, I don't know where they'll eventually be, because I didn't see any conceptual drawings of where the septics would lie on the property. But if there are 2 septic systems on those back properties, and there's any failure, or even heavy rain, because septics are not perfect solutions, and if we've got heavy rains, and we've got a lot of wash going down, there's only one place for that stuff to go, and that's on my property, and that's on Vinegar's property. So I'm really concerned from the health aspect, how these septic systems will perform, and will it be safe for us? And it's just natural that if you've looked at that property layout, it's all downhill from where the garage and the house currently sits into our property and through the Vinegar's property. There's just no other place for water to flow. So those are my main concerns. And just a general question for you. With requirements, acreage requirements, do flag lots get the same consideration if they constitute a full acre in a flag lot setup as compared to, let's just say, a rectangular or pie-shaped lot? Is none of that part of the consideration? That's just a general question for you guys. I don't know if you know the answer offhand, but that's just a question for me.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that.
So are you, if I understand the question, are you asking if the flag, the area within the pole counts towards the 1 acre
And
required?
it seems to do it.
It does.
But I'm curious if there's not any additional consideration when approving that lot for well and septic.
So that's one of the conditions of approval, is that they would have to show they would have to submit the health department approval for the septic system, because they have to have enough area for their septic lines, for a second set of lines for failure.
Right.
And the well. They would have to submit that approval letter from the health department before we would approve the final plat. And that's standard operations.
Okay. Now, under perfect
Mr.
conditions.
Buffetta, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to move on
Okay,
because there's other folks who.
You've got my main concerns.
Sure,
And, those are the things that I'm worried about.
sure. And I appreciate
Okay.
you coming and voicing them for sure.
Okay, and I'll let my neighbors speak because I'm sure they'll have similar concerns and maybe some additional ones to throw on the pile.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Not a problem. What's next? Again, please give us your name and your address.
Renee Demery Vinegar, 208 Dartmouth Place West, right next door to Steve. So my concerns are in line with Steve. It's very much a downgrade. When we have heavy rain, all the water comes in that direction. My second concern is if it's a 1,500 square foot house we're talking about in those back 2 lots, that doesn't really, it's not the same kind of housing that we have in that area, not just in the estates, but across the street and the neighboring subdivisions. Those are small houses behind someone else's house. That just makes me wonder, who's going to buy that? And are those residents going to comply? I mean, our neighborhood pool, tennis court, and playground are right next to that flagpole, basically. So I just have concerns about that, the neighbors that are going to be in Steve's backyard, my backyard, and they're going to want to participate in our neighborhood amenities that, they don't qualify for, frankly. Along with the trees that we enjoy having privacy in our backyard, and the water, the runoff. I'm against this.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Suzanne Brown. I live in Crescent Oak. The current owner bought this property in August of 2022 and tried to rent it. Now they're trying to subdivide it. The existing house on the property was built in the 1950s, long before Peachtree City was even built. This is a complicated issue, so I do hope each of you made a site visit to the property in order to understand what's actually going on there. Obviously, the residents are concerned, so am I. If you drove past the property frontage on Robinson, you might think that the lot is relatively flat, but it's not. Behind the garage, sloping down to Steve's property, it drops 30 or 40 feet in about 150 linear feet. That's a big drop. If you go on the golf cart path and stand on the northeast corner of the property, you'll see that behind the existing garage, where it drops off, there's drainage that runs off, and it enters into the drainage ditch behind Mr. Vinegar's property. The problem with that is there's a lot of water that goes that direction. So it's already creating damage to the embankment of the drainage ditch. And it's already starting to cut all the way into up where he has his fence. There appears to be a lot of erosion and runoff damage which is occurring with mature trees and undisturbed land or forest on the back of 1116 Robinson. Generally mature, large caliber trees, and some of them are really big, and I'm talking really big. Mature trees, large caliber, and undisturbed leaf mulch and branches usually slows down erosion and runoff. If you go in there and you cut all those trees down to put 2 houses in there, it's going to be a flood. The issue will most likely be much worse if you allow those to be cut down and construct just on the back half, not even a full half of the property. 2 driveways, 2 houses, 2 garages, 2 septic systems, 2 leach fields, and 2 yards. Some of the pine trees that will be cut are over 100 feet tall. There are oak trees that are over 36 caliper inches. They just cannot be replaced. They're historic specimen trees that are simply beyond beautiful. To cut them down should be basically criminal. I do want to point out that there are legal issues when water runs off one resident's property and onto another resident's property or onto city property. The current proposal to create 4 lots so that this investor can sell off the 4 buildable lots is far too aggressive for this property. I also question whether a septic tank and leach field can even be placed on lots 1 and 4 without creating black, gray, or white water that runs off into neighboring properties or into the drainage ditch, which would cause an environmental disaster. Has anyone done a perk test? Well, we know that they haven't yet. So what can and should the property owner do, and what should the Planning Commission and City Council do? This property is currently zoned AR and can be divided, as Keith pointed out. It can be divided into 2 lots. Each lot would have about 210 feet of linear footage on Robinson Road, which would meet the guidelines to divide under AR. Creating just the 2 lots on the property does not require rezoning. It would also allow them to provide the 50-foot green belt dedicated to the city along Robinson so that they would not need that variance. And if they divide the property into just 2 lots, the 2 residences could share the existing driveway, so you wouldn't need a variance to create 2 separate driveways. Using the existing driveway for the 2 lots would preserve most of the trees along the north and south property line where they are proposing those 2 new driveways. Their request to rezone and then divide the property into 4 lots should be denied. And I realize you don't vote on this to deny it, but I think you should unanimously not recommend it. This is the request of an investor, not a resident homeowner. We need to remember that. It's not in the best interest of adjacent homeowners. It's not in the best interest of Peachtree City. It's in the best interest of the investor. The Planning Commission is not obligated to recommend approval. I hope you get your vote back on Thursday. I'm rooting for you, I'll be there. And City Council is not obligated to approve any of these requests either. If you approve it and you are likely to cause damage to adjacent property owners, that damage may not become apparent for years to come. But with all of the fault of this investor, this rezoning request, and ultimately the Planning Commission and City Council who approve it. But by the time you realize what the damage is going to be, the investor will be long gone. The new owners will be stuck with the legal obligations to fix it. Any claim that they have the right to get the most profit from their property or investment is quite simply not true, and it has no legal justification. An owner has a legal right to use their land as it is currently zoned. They bought agricultural land, they have the right to use it as such. They have the right to divide it as such. They can apply for rezoning, but there's no implied right to get the rezoning, especially when it comes with a list of necessary variances and a list of potential harm to all of the neighbors. Ordinances are there to protect all residents, so other residents cannot cause physical or financial damage to others and the city. So what can the property owner do without rezoning and variances? They can divide it into 2 lots. That's what I suggest they do, and I suggest that you recommend that this whole thing not be approved.
Thank you, is there? Okay.
I'm Linda Ellis, live in Crescent Oak, Peachtree City. Just a few comments. I'm a tree hugger. I actually went and looked at the property today, and it's amazing how beautiful this chunk of land is. You need to go and look at the property before you make a decision. It has a steep slope, and I am very concerned if you take those trees out, erosion and water runoff is a huge concern. It is a beautiful chunk of land with very nice old trees and huge, tall. How big will the leach fields be? Do we know that? Because leach fields can't have any trees or roots in it. So all these trees gonna have to go. How big will the houses be? And what about the property that's right below? They will have their own private pond in their backyard. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Pam Dans. I live in the Summit, which is across Robinson from the lots. We have an acre lot. Two things got me here tonight. One was the fact that the people who move into Peachtree City move in because of the ambience, because of the larger homes, because of the trees being protected. Everything you buy is not actually a square foot of land, it's the things that go along with it. I think we're zoned to protect that. And if there's a general rush to change zonings and give variances and constantly erode the original plans, I think that's wrong, because we bought here because of the original plans, because it was, in our case, you're not allowed to subdivide lots in the Summit. The homeowners prohibits it. You buy that lot knowing it's not going to be turned into little houses, and yet right across the street, we're trying to drag down the whole feeling of the neighborhood. The second thing that got me here was that Robinson is kind of a fast road, and there's a tendency to hit deer and things, and it's set up so that you don't have a lot of egress and entrance off the road. Every other development than this little 4-house development has an entrance and sometimes an exit, maybe onto the road. But you'd be adding another driveway. I should think you would be trying to subtract another driveway to keep the traffic safe. That's all I could think of. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm getting towards the end. My name is Pamela Presbyshevsky, and I live in the Marks across the street from where the houses are, this is being proposed. And pretty much I agree with pretty much everything most people have said. I do think it would be better if we do go ahead with this. I think 2 lots more would be enough, more than enough. I think 4 is too many. I think Pam hit it on the head as far as the egress coming out. We've got neighborhood entrances coming onto this road, Robinson Road, but there's also other entrances outside of our neighborhoods. These people would have to get onto Robinson Road, and it can be pretty dangerous. And like she said, there's always people hitting deer. There's a lot of bike riders. It's kind of, we just don't need the extra traffic is what I'm trying to say. I also am a little bit concerned about the 1,500 square foot homes. I think it's a little small for our area, even if it is wrapped in brick. I'm concerned about the property values. It doesn't fit the area. The houses are much bigger than that. And
I'm sorry, can you just, I'm sorry, Pam, I just need you to
so
just address us with your comments.
I'm concerned that the small size of the houses would not only not fit with the look of the area, but also would affect our value of our homes.
Sure.
Thank you.
Not a problem. Is there anyone else here to speak in opposition? Yes, yes, please.
I'm Michelle Profeta, Steve's wife. And the health concerns are major concerns. But for 32 years, I've looked out at these beautiful trees, and the way the light comes through those trees throughout the day, it would be really almost a crime to cut those trees. And also, we live in the estates, and there's an entrance, Woodruff Way, and an entrance, Callaway Crossing. And really, when you were calling this a subdivision, I was thinking, so it's going to be a subdivision within our subdivision, because it would lie within those two framing entrances. And there's an elementary school a little bit farther down the road, and we have our little clubhouse and tennis courts and children's playground right there. Like, that property would be right next to the playground. And it just seems like it's too much to squeeze in 3 more houses, and then the one that's already there. That's what they want to do. There's not space for all that, and it's going to destroy. We live in this beautiful little spot there at the end of Peachtree City where there still are a lot of trees, and I just would love for them to consider that important, that they keep that natural beauty.
Thank you. And I think there was a gentleman, yes, in the back.
Good evening. My name is Felipe Ruiz. I live at 117 Summit Walk. A lot of the people here I'm friends with, or I've seen while walking in the area. And this current proposal is mind-boggling. It's completely out of character with the area. There's nothing like it in the estates, along Summit Walk, anywhere. So for you to consider this, it's like doing a complete about turn in terms of why people chose to buy homes that they're currently living in. At 1,500 square feet, that's a squeeze. Probably most homes are double, if not larger, in the area. From my experience, woodland, for you guys has no value. Behind Shake Rag, 9 acres was toppled, no questions asked. And over here, as you can see, everyone, they love the trees. Can you put a monetary value on that? I don't think you can. Not everything can be priced in dollars. So, it's quality of life, it's that whole life experience, ambiance. I mean, there's so many positive things we associate with trees. So in a matter of minutes, you guys can make a decision, and when you reflect on it, these trees have been longer than the average lifespan of a human being. So I think you should really reflect on what value you attach to the woodland, and obviously the impact. If you drop these trees, what's going to happen? No one wants to have a pond in their backyard, erosion, septic issues, septic water flowing onto their lots. Who's going to clean that up? I think that's pretty much what my concerns are. I hope you make the right decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Let's go right ahead.
Just to be quick. My name's Ed Hadzik. I live just directly to the north of this lot. And I'd just like you to vote no, just to keep the AR lots available to us. We only got 3 of them left, and part of your job is to keep this city beautiful, and that lot is what does that. So if we only got 3 left, let's keep it that way. Thanks.
Very good. Go right ahead.
Ron Pace, I live at 209 Dartmouth Place West, next to Steve, and I can echo his sentiments. I agree that the character, the safety concerns, especially with it being close to play area, the playground area and the pool. Home value is important to me, like all of us here, I believe, and I don't think we should sacrifice that just for the benefit of an investor. I agree totally. He's in it totally for the money. We're here to live in the comfort of our homes. And to jeopardize that, I feel, will be a big mistake. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else here in opposition?
Hi, really quickly, I'm Shannon Gladden, and I live
near this property as well, in the estates. The estates as an entire neighborhood would love to have been able to give you an opinion on this, but we, from a standing of how quickly this operates, we feel like we'd love to have more time to share our thoughts. As many of us could be here tonight, we were able to get, but again, you know, there's a lot of issues when you start to try and develop a property like this. John Wieland, who originally developed the property, chose not to develop it because he kept it as a green land. If he'd taken it on and built it in originally, there would have only been a one-for-one exchange, one house for one house. So instead, he left it green. When you look at the playground area, we actually currently have drainage issues in our playground as well as all the issues that are going on in other areas. So when you try to continue developing it, that's a concern for us. And then also trash can pickup on Robinson Road. I think people also mentioned the fact that it's an extremely busy roadway. So you're looking at adding 3 additional pickups for trash, as well as the construction that would occur there over a year that would cause challenges for the entire roadway. And then from a perspective of thinking about how this affects Peachtree City going forward, when we start to do all these variances, instead of just doing, hey, here's what's capable within the land, then you're starting to change the look of Peachtree City. And my favorite quote is, Central Park in New York City might not be the best and highest use of land, but it certainly makes everything around it more valuable. So really thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, is there anyone else here to speak in opposition?
Commissioners, I just want to make one observation. Every time I've come to a city council meeting and there's a variance request on the table for a decision, one of the questions that always comes up to the city planner is, where are the letters of support from the neighbors that are impacted by this request? I will tell you right now, in the package for the meeting tonight, there are no letters of support. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, so we'll move on then. And I do appreciate all of you coming out to voice your opinion. At this point, the applicant is not here, so commissioners, I guess any questions that we have, we'll have to address them to staff, who may or may not be able to answer them. But we'll take it from there. So let's start with questions, if there are any that the staff may be able to answer. And we'll start with Commissioner Johnson. Any questions?
So it's a lot of information, and thank you so much for everything that you guys provided. I guess one of my questions just related to like the health concerns that they mentioned. And unfortunately, I have not been by to look at this, but I will definitely do that. Is like, can anything be done grading wise to change like the flow of the rain? Like, can something be done about that, or would it have already been done?
Yes, you can always grade, but that requires removal of trees.
Yeah, still removal, okay. Yeah, right now that I'm trying to process it all, but right now I don't have any additional questions.
Commissioner Reeves.
Yes, very much appreciate everyone and everything that you said. It was very helpful information. One of the questions I have is, because I don't remember, how many variances are we talking about for this particular property?
There are 2 variances being requested.
Okay. And one of the things I think I heard was concerning the easements and maybe switching the 50-foot requirement to the front or something like that. Can you?
It was actually the opposite.
Okay.
The 50 is required in what would be considered the front yard,
Mm-hmm.
and 30 in the rear. And staff is recommending that if this is approved, that they actually switch those so that it's 50 in the rear, which is the part that actually abuts the estate's neighborhood.
Okay. One of the commenters mentioning that this is one of the last, there's only 3 AR lots left, and as a newcomer Where are the other AR lots, and how did we go from, and what did we go from?
Well,
to-
and in fairness to the city, AR was never meant to be the end result. It was literally called agricultural reserve. It's what everything in the city was zoned before it was zoned to Kedron Village or West Village. So, but there are some lots that predate Peachtree City, and this is one of them. There's these 3 up here. And then I believe there may be one more on the north side off of Old Sonoy Road.
Okay, well, I think those are my questions.
Sure.
Those are my questions, thanks.
So staff, let me just ask this question before I move on to the other commissioners, because it's come up. It seems as though at least the neighbors think that this is a potential investment opportunity. And my question really has to do with intent. Do we know, because the applicant's not here, so we can't ask them, is this someone seeking to, develop property to invest, to sell out four lots, or is there some other kind of intention?
Well, I can tell you what I've been told. But as planners, we always take the long view, the 20-year view.
Sure.
What I've been told is that this is one family to purchase, and so that they can all live close by. They are a local business owner. They have several of the restaurants in the area, and they have family members that they would like to all live together in sort of a family compound. However, intent never, we don't try to look at intent. It's always the end result.
Sure. Okay, well, that was the question that I had, because again, I think some folks believe that this might be an investment opportunity, and it may be, I don't know, but because the applicant's not here, we can't really question them about it. So let me move on and ask Commissioner Renard if he has any questions.
Sure. Question going back again to the AR and the R43. The main differences, and I know that you have some in there, but the main differences between the two, number one is 150-foot landscape buffer in the front, along the frontage. And the, I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's linear frontage
Linear frontage, I'm
of
sorry.
what's on, so it's not landscape buffer, it's a linear frontage on a public road.
Okay, linear frontage, thank you. So that's one main difference between the two. Aside from that, if looking at AR versus R43, minimum 1,500 square foot homes.
Actually, the
Or is that different?
AR is smaller. They
Okay,
have a-
so that is smaller, okay. That was
AR
one
has
of
a
the-
smaller house size.
Okay. Second question, I know there's a lot of concern, of course, with the trees. Is there anything, if this would be split into just 2 and maintain the AR, is there anything that would stop the homeowner from going in and removing the trees up to the 30-foot rear buffer?
I will tell you that the agricultural zone actually allows what's called timbering. And so somebody could, and there is nothing, in fact, there's Georgia law that protects the timbering that occurs in agricultural zoned land. However, so that's always a possibility. What we look at is we allow trees to be removed within the area that's required for a building permit. And we don't question which trees they are. We just say, okay, if you're taking it down for that building permit, then you can take it down without a tree permit. Anything outside of that, we would require a tree permit
Right.
unless they pulled the timber card on
Okay.
us.
That's interesting to note. So right now, as it sits, they could literally go in there and take the trees out?
Yeah, they could come in and pay a $10 timbering permit fee from the state of Georgia.
Okay. Okay, that's interesting to note. And from the layout, unfortunately, we didn't have the actual plan view that was presented. Correct? Yeah, in the package. One of the
Oh, we did? I'm
questions.
sorry.
That's okay. With the AR, what is the maximum?
I think they
2 lots,
might be
or
able
would
to
they
get
be
3. I think they might
Okay.
be able to get 3.
That's another point, is looking at 3 versus 2 as it's been brought up. So right now, as it stands, they could possibly put 3 lots
Or total of, so
For
two
total of.
additionals, as
Okay.
it's currently.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Hamner?
Yeah,
questions?
actually, I have a question for Mr. Profeta when he was speaking earlier. Just very briefly, did the current landowner ever reach out to you, communicate to you, or say anything about what they wanted to do with this property, given that you're against it? Obviously not required, but still very good to know, especially given what Mr. Larson said about some of the letters that are typically seen for these type of things. So thank you for that. And then for city staff, obviously we're looking at this plan right now for this, if it is rezoned to that residential. But have there been any other plans that have been discussed for this?
Yes. We, when we first came in, staff suggested the 3 lots. And for a long time, we have discussed that, and they understand that, that they're going through this process, and therefore they're applying for it.
Got it. So 3 had been discussed, but then it turned into 4 at some point, correct? Yeah, okay, got it. Obviously, a lot of variance is being requested for this as well. I don't recall hearing, I could be totally wrong on this, but I don't recall hearing so many variances like this on a residential. Do you have any idea?
I think somebody brought up a really good point where the number of developable lots and land in the city, particularly for residential, is quickly diminishing. And so this is, if you really look at this, this is actually redevelopment.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of our, I think we've had redevelopment off of Loring Lane. I don't know if you remember sort of that Cavalier. That was another house that was divided into, it was 5 acres, and so it was divided into 5 1-acre lots.
Mm-hmm.
That was redevelopment, and I think this is also redevelopment.
Got it.
And when you have redevelopment, you have typically more variances because people are asking to do something with land that, for various reasons, was passed over when it was easy.
Mm-hmm.
And now that it's not so easy, they're back for these requests.
Got it. And then one last question. Obviously, we heard a lot of concerns about the septic, about the health concerns as well. I think you mentioned this earlier, but just want to confirm that the rezoning is contingent on this being safe from a septic perspective. Is that correct?
That's a staff recommendation. It's, nothing in our ordinance requires that they do that before rezoning. It's required to do it during final plat process. So if they were coming in and not asking for a rezoning, and this was an AR lot, and we were just doing what's called a minor subdivision, where they're not adding roads and all of that, we would not approve any kind of minor subdivision without that approval from the health department. But there's nothing in our ordinance that says we have to require that during rezoning, and so that's why staff is recommending that condition.
But the rezoning could already be done by that point, correct?
It's contingent, that's what the condition would be, is that it would be contingent upon that.
Okay, got it.
All right, Commissioner Chris, any questions?
Yeah, so does the city ever recommend like a study or analysis of water flow and how it might affect the abutting properties?
That's called a hydrology study, and it's required for any development, including one like this. So what they would be required to do is do a hydrology study, and then they would be required to show where on their property they are planning on retaining water so that it doesn't flow off into their neighbors. I have answered about as much as I can. I'm trying to think of what else I know about that topic, but that's managed by our city engineer.
And that would be required for any redevelopment of this tract of land, whether or not the zoning is changed?
Only if they subdivide.
Only if they subdivide.
So if they didn't subdivide and they wanted to take down the existing house and put up another larger house, they wouldn't be required to do a hydrology. But if they did the minor subdivision or this, something like this, then they would be required.
And just to clarify, so under the current zoning that's there, it looks like it's possible that there would be a subdivision, a maximum subdivision of about 3 lots with a lesser buffer than what's being recommended by staff.
There would be no buffer required.
0 buffer?
Well, And I guess, what do you mean by buffer?
between this property and the abutting properties.
Correct. There would be nothing, there'd be no, because there's no rezoning, there's no hook for us to put those requirements on.
Okay. That's all.
Okay, so now we'll move on to comments by commissioners, and let's start with Commissioner Reeves. You have any comments?
I think it's concerning to me the number of variances that are associated with this, in addition to the fact that the request is for 4 lots. I think when you take the time to have a 20-year, 30-year planning plan for the city, it's important to pretty much stick to that, or not to defer from that too much. And I think projects like this, you really, really need to analyze a lot of different things, and I'm really not in favor of it.
All right, Commissioner Johnston.
So without like rehashing, you know, all the issues and everything, I think what stands out to me is that since there is another option to do less, like divide it into less than 4, like to do 2, or you said 3 was discussed, you know, in order to avoid additional variances and another driveway and everything that's needed to make that work. I'm not in favor of doing it like they're proposing. So I'm not in favor of it.
Okay. Commissioner Rittenhouse.
Sure, I think, and this is kind of difficult, I'm looking at it from a standpoint, and hence my questions between the AR and the R43. You know, as it stands now, as AR, if they were able to put 3 lots on, smaller homes, they would literally be able to go in and pretty much clear cut the property. And I think that's one of the things that needs to be taken into consideration from the standpoint of the people who brought that up, understanding that I don't want to take down trees also. But as it sits now, those trees could be gone tomorrow. And I think you need to keep that in mind with thinking that the property as it sits will stay green. And I think that's a concern from me, that there may be some misunderstanding that if it does not go through, it's going to maintain the trees and maintain the look the way it is, and that's not correct. These people may move on if they can't get their 4 homes, 4 lots. They may come in and decide to go ahead and put 3 lots with 1,500 square foot homes with septic systems that meet state and county requirements, and take all the trees out. So it's a very difficult situation as to if it goes forward, and understand that we don't have the final say. I mean, this will go to city council, and city council will make the final say on it. But if it stays the way it is, there may be some things that you don't like with the way it remains. And I think you really need to think about that also, whether good or bad. So I see, you know, that side of it. And I see that there are some things that the city can do if it was developed into 4 lots, where there would be some requirements put on to maintain and save some of the trees and save some of the property. But now you end up with the problem with having 4 lots possibly and 4 homes and everything else. So it's hate to say it's a catch-22 in some regards, but it is a catch-22. And, you know, it's a very difficult decision. I wish there was a simple answer to it. And unfortunately, I don't see there is a simple answer to this one, so.
All right, Commissioner Hamner. No, you can't right now. We're having our final deliberation around comments. Commissioner Hamner.
Yeah, I don't like this plan. As it is, and I have concerns about the variances associated with it, even though it's a redevelopment. And, you know, I think about this from, you know, again, not required, but again, you know, it doesn't seem like there was a lot of community outreach in terms of, you know, getting some opinions in terms of what others would think of it. I don't think it fits the kind of the aesthetic in terms of what we want out of Peachtree City as well. But having said that, you know, I would say that, you know, there's two sorts of precedents for this. Obviously, again, the R43, a lot of it's around there as well. It seems to follow the future use plan as well. You know, so there are some things about the actual zoning, take the plan out of it, that could work for this area, just from a pure zoning perspective. But at the same time, there is precedent, you know, take opinion out of this in terms of like, do we like this or not? You know, I was thinking back, there's been plans, similar things have happened in the past where you're trying to cram all of these properties within this area. Actually, there was an area that was discussed back in 2016 off of Ebenezer Road, right at the county line, where they did pretty much this exact same thing, and they required a lot of variances for it to be accomplished. And city council said no to it. It was 0 to 5 on it. So I think that, again, the plan itself, I'm not a fan of, and there's precedent in order for us to say no to this. But again, from a zoning perspective, you know, R43, it seems to follow a lot of the plans in terms of what we want from the future use plan and things like that. It ties into what Scott was saying a moment ago in terms of like, you know, this is a difficult decision. There's good and bad to it as well. But looking at the precedent of this, again, the plan itself, not great. I personally don't like it, but even taking my own opinion out of it, there's precedent that says that that this would not work, but the zoning itself possibly could.
Thank you. Commissioner Chris.
Yeah, I would just want to echo my fellow commissioners and thank the community for coming out to participate in this process. I want to thank the staff for doing their hard work. You can tell that there's a lot of work in this proposal and the staff opinion and comments. I am extremely disappointed the applicant's not here to represent the proposal and to talk a little bit about what they intend to do with the property and the benefits maybe to the surrounding community that they might have in their mind. I agree with Commissioner Hamner and Rittenauer that I think this is a complicated decision. I think that it would be nice to have a rezoning that would possibly help to preserve the character of this particular community. I agree with Commissioner Hamner, I don't think that this particular plan represents that. So my main comment is I would encourage staff to continue to possibly work with this applicant to preserve the character of the surrounding community with what they plan to do with this property.
All right, very good. And so my comments really have been echoed by everyone else. And Commissioner Chris, your first comment was exactly my thoughts as well. I'm disappointed that the applicant's not here because I think that the homeowners deserve an opportunity to address the applicant with their comments and questions, and as do we. And so I'm disappointed in that. But having said that, I think you're all right. This is very complicated. It's not easy. I live near here, and I drove by there. I did go by there for some of you who wondered whether we went by and took a look at it. And you know, I agree with some of the comments with respect to the slope and all of the trees that would have to be taken out. But on the other hand, again, you know, if the property owner wanted to just develop 3 lots, they could still do that, take those trees out, and still have 3 lots there. It makes it difficult to really kind of think about is it right or is it wrong? The property owner has the right to do within the law what they want and can do, but on the other hand, that may not fit well within the community. That's the existing homes that are there, and there are some beautiful, nice homes over in Robinson Estates. I'm down that road a lot, and I understand your feelings around wanting the homes to fit in within the neighborhood. We all want that, and that's easily understood. But on the other hand, there are rights that an applicant has that they're entitled to, and so that's what makes it complicated. It's not an easy yes or no or right or wrong. It's complicated by that. But I fall down on the lines of really not supporting it though, because I don't think it fits in with the neighborhood as well. Although, again, I understand and I agree with rights that a property owner has, but it just doesn't look to me that it would fit well within that neighborhood. And, you know, if I live next door or behind, like the Bennigans or you know, or the Prophetas, I understand that. I understand how you feel. I really do. But please understand, as the commissioners articulated, there are certain things that just could happen anyway. Whether you know, whether it gets approved or not, or if it gets approved, you know, in a certain way. So this is complicated. It's not easy. But again, I don't support it as it stands now. But I also recognize that the applicant could come in and sit down with staff and say, I want 3 houses, and some of the things we don't like would happen. And so you got to recognize that very well may happen. So I'm going to summarize what I think I heard, and hopefully this makes its way to City Council as they consider as they are doing their deliberations. But obviously, there was no one here in support of the rezoning, and I have 12 people who were here in opposition for various reasons, from you know, lot size is not right, not wanting trees removed, the septic tanks, and you know, all the reasons that you guys listed. You know, we'll make sure that there's a record of that. It was mentioned that there's no letters of support. While they're not needed, it would have been nice, again, if they touch base with the community and the neighbors. You know, they may have had some support. Who knows? I don't know. But the fact that there is no one here in support of that and no letters of support, I think speaks to the community sentiment around this particular property. All the commissioners recognize the difficulty and the complexity of this issue. Some were clearly not in favor of it, but again, some understand it. While it doesn't fit and there's no outreach, it's still potentially within allowable, within, you know, if they came in and took a look at it and sat down with staff, they could still, you know, make this work with 3 houses as opposed to 4, for example. So it's, you know, I think the sentiment is that most of us are not in favor of it, but we recognize there's no clear answer to this as it stands right now, yes or no. So council will, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen from here, Robin, I really don't. But this is, you know, this is how I see it based on what we've been presented with.
I think you all have helped staff immensely, and we'll be able to summarize that and put that into the staff report. I have a page of bullet points, Mr. Kritz.
All right, well, that will conclude workshop item number PW 2. Yes. Ms. Brown, for you, yes. Go right ahead. I'm not sure I'll be able to answer a technical question. You might be able to have to ask that to staff, but go right ahead.
I'll take that privilege, I guess. One, I want to make sure that you all know that the property is currently rented. That's one. Not that that matters too much. When I read through this, it discussed the zoning, and it also discussed like that the variance was tied to the zoning. If those are untied, and the one variance that I'm talking about is with regard to the 50-foot green belt along Robinson. So it kind of said that, see, they need every square foot of acreage to qualify to do 4 lots, so they don't want to give away that 50-foot green belt. But they have to have a variance in order to do what they're trying to do instead of the green belt. So if you took the variance out of the issue and said, well, we'll let you rezone as R43, but we're not giving you the variance for the green belt, if that's unbundled, then it forces them to look at a smaller lot. And I thought from what I read, you had to have 150-foot linear frontage on Robinson in order to have a second lot. They talked, it mentions in there how many feet, you have to have 40 feet, was it 40 feet?
For R43,
for
yes, ma'am.
R43. What was the number for
150.
150. So if you have to have 150 linear feet on Robinson and there's only 420, you can only get 2 lots on there.
Here we go.
I don't believe you can do 3.
That number.
And that's critical. If you unbundle that variance request, that'll take away the 4th lot. And if you say, okay, R43, that's gonna change it, but if you leave it as AR, they have to have 150 foot. So that's a consideration too.
Oh, thank you, for sure. All right, so we're going to move on to our last workshop item.
Okay.
And again, this was the
Very
one I
good.
mentioned earlier. We were just going to have a overview by staff on this, and we'll pick this up at our next meeting. But the workshop item is PW 23-02-02. And by the way, thank you again for all those who came. And feel free to stay if you want, but thank you for coming out. We appreciate it. This is the design guidelines updates for Highway 54 Overlay District. And so after they clear up, we'll turn it over to staff.
Okay. Give you just a moment to switch my brain.
And I forgot, it was in part 2 of the packet.
Okay,
I
okay.
apologize for that. I'm like, I don't remember seeing that, and then I'm like, wait a minute, I know I saw that. It was in part 2. I apologize.
So, we have been talking about updating these design guidelines for over a year now. And we contracted out with a local company who, quite frankly, did us a charity. And did this for what I would consider a very reasonable amount. But it was limited, and the scope was limited. And that was something that was kind of expressed to staff from the very beginning, is it really needs to focus on these architectural standards. And as you know from reviewing this, there's quite a bit more in these design guidelines than just what color brick, et cetera. But these were the parameters that were put on us, and essentially, let's not make changes unless we really need to, and unless it addresses those things. So we didn't crack open, I like to say, signage, parking is an issue, and signage is unique to this. Some of these design guideline things talk about things that are already covered in our normal city ordinance as well. And so sometimes those line up and sometimes they don't. And so we really just focused on those architectural design guidelines, or I think there was one sentence where there was a clear, one sentence said it shall and the next sentence said should, and it was a clear conflict, but we'll get into those details at the next meeting. I did want to let you know, as a project, how this has to proceed. It does have to go through what's called the ZPL, the Zoning Procedures Law. So that means it does have to go through, and this is a little bit of again, the horse getting in front of the cart, because Thursday, I guess I'm doing a little bit of crystal ball reading, and that never goes well for me. But if you all get the zoning public hearing back, it would then have to come back through you as a separate public hearing in the future, and then the city council public hearing. Now, right now, those are tentatively scheduled for March 13th for you all and April 6th for the city council, but I wanted to stress here, if you all feel like, even after our next meeting, that you need more time, that we need more time, let's take it. Let's do it right, and we will make the schedule fit that instead. That is, the schedule is flexible. So I'm going to go through just some highlights tonight, so that the next time we will get into and we will go through each section, so you all have the pleasure of knowing what it is that we do when we do a plan review. One of the things that really helped staff is they've added these new section headers and section numbers. Part of what we had to do is we had to go in and number paragraphs so that you guys could see, well, the old paragraph number 1 is over here, followed by paragraph 3, so it was really nice to have these section headers added to, and that was throughout the document. The next thing we did was we talked about site furnishings. And I want Mr.
Yeah, you know he did.
I want to make sure that Mr. Larson hears this. We clarified that bike racks are required. This was where they had a sentence, one said should and one said shall. And so we made both sentences say shall. So we clarified that bike racks are required. We removed the specification of which bike rack. I know from my transportation planning days that was ribbon racks are less than desirable to put your bike into. And we added some example photographs, really trying to broaden some of the creative uses of site furniture that's out there. You can see some of these really cool benches, as well as the standard benches, really different kinds of bike racks, as well as that traditional U rack that is shown at the bottom. We enhanced the public art section. Before it was one sentence. Now we have added some specifications as well as an entire page of recommended public or examples, I should say, of public art, some of which are in the city and some of which we've had to go to nearby cities to pull examples. Here's where the big meat of the project, kind of the rubber hit the road. They split the styles. Right now, there's one style, and it's that traditional, what they are now calling that traditional 2002 style. They kept it there, but then they also created a second style called the updated 2020 style. And that helps us so that there's that consistency. So if somebody like a Take 5 wants to come in and use that traditional style, they still can, and all of the requirements that were pertained to it, for the most part, still exist. Or if they wanted to do something more updated, then they could choose that style, and there are some recommended materials, et cetera, for them. We tried to remove any specific colors that were required. This really came to light in the roof and with the canopies. Before, there were 4 colors, essentially: green, burgundy, black, and navy, that were permitted and only permitted. You couldn't do anything else. And so we've removed that, but we've added a statement that says substantially the same or equal to existing roof colors in the guideline area. That way we don't end up with turquoise, per se. We have the ability to say that's not substantially the same. So we still have some form of way of keeping things cohesive. We also removed any specific, we went through and made sure that all of anything that was specifically mentioned, like the brick color or the stucco color, we went sure and made sure that those were still manufactured. When we discovered that the lighting company has been bought and no longer manufactures any of the lights that were listed in the ordinance. And so you will see that we've removed that specific fixture. We've added one that was as close as we could find, made by who now owns that company. And then added again that language in there about being substantially the same. I've mentioned that we did not crack open the signage section, but our consultant actually recommended that we add a type of signage called edge mounted. And so I wanted to bring this forward to you all to see if you're interested in a sort of opening up a little bit of that parameters, opening up signage and tackling not only, because I know that there are dated references, it references neon. It only allows neon of certain colors because those were the only colors that neon came in. Also, I was surprised, been here 6 years, and my staff pointed out to me that the size standards in the overlay are not the same as they are in the rest of the city. And so they are substantially smaller, the maximum of 24-inch letters out there. So is that I don't know if anybody even really noticed that when you drive through there. And then, of course, this edge-mounted signage. Is this something that clearly is being done in other modern, hip developments? Is that something that we want to add in this area only?
Can you explain what
Edge-mounted?
Yeah.
Can you see how you've got a canopy that sticks out? And then these letters, they're not mounted onto the brick, they're mounted onto the canopy itself, and they're perpendicular. I think, even though I blew this picture up, I think this one shows it a little bit better. How it's on the edge of a canopy, or very close to the edge of a canopy, and it's perpendicular to it, so it stands up. You know, obviously, if you were interested in that, I would strongly recommend some strong language that prohibited things that you might not want to see, like a huge marquee or something like that. We want it to be small, discreet. We wouldn't want it to be any larger than what it's required if it were a wall sign, those types of things. We wouldn't want it to be internally illuminated. That's a big no-no in Peachtree City, those types of things. But so if you're interested in adding it, it can be tailored so that it is tasteful.
So the previous bullet where you talked about the smaller size than the rest of the city, if, and I don't understand why that is as well, but if we were interested in having it equal to the rest of the city, do you think that business owners and vendors would go back and increase the size of the name, or?
I think that
is
if you
just-
had new vendors come in, which we do in this area, see tenant, I think you would start to see them replacing out the signs with some larger ones, yes. I can tell you why it probably was, is that if this is supposed to be a walkable urban environment, then you don't need great big signs because people aren't driving through at 30 miles an hour. They're not driving through at 30 miles an hour anyway because of the traffic. But that, I think, was probably the intent.
Okay.
It does add a layer of complexity. It does add, a regularly reoccurring conversation with applicants. Yeah, well, they over down on the south side. That's a different part of the city. So it does add some complexity to staff's job, but certainly not something that, and like I said, if we crack this open, you may not be interested in that, but you may be interested in the outdated references and the light sign. So this is completely what you all would want to see versus what staff thinks. And then, again, for the next meeting, what we would really do is, my plan is, and y'all tell me if you feel like this is helpful, my plan is to go and start through part 3, because that's really where the work starts, and just go through each section. If it's not been changed, I would just do a quick summary of that section. And if it has been changed, then I would highlight that change and tell you the reason why. And then, of course, completely open. This is a workshop in its truest form. Really do want you all to say, well, have you thought of, or I don't like this, or however whatever recommendations you all might have. That is why we wanted to give you plenty of time to be able to get in there, because y'all see this day in and at your meetings, you see these developments of anybody in the city who is really equipped to help us. It is you, the Planning Commission.
So let me ask another question, if I may, just with respect to the language that's in the document. So it looks like Jefferson Architecture was hired or consulted to come in and make and provide some revision or comment, to suggest or recommend changes to sections. And I guess the question I have is, the sections themselves, beyond Jefferson's recommendations for changes, do the sections themselves in the language, is it outdated? Is it pretty much, are we satisfied with the language
There's-
that exists there?
I would say, you can hear Laura laughing. It seems to me that it was written by several different people who were experts in their area and then just kind of put together. There are some areas that are, I would have written, Laura definitely would have written differently so that it's more clear. I've got section 4B.3 as an example. As you can see, now, we didn't touch it, but this is Laura's recommended changes that we make to it. And you can see they're all down here
Yeah.
and notes here. So, but that was so that it would read better, not necessarily change the content or intent. But we stepped back from that mode actually for a couple of reasons. One is because we were, given the direction of don't touch it unless you need to. And two, this is a PDF and it's not Word, and it's a 20-year-old document that's in PDF, and tracking changes is very challenging, not only for us, but I can't imagine for you guys who are just trying to read this and understand what's changed. And so we decided not to do that, but we can. We can go back through. I mean, if you all say, Robin, this, we could do better.
Well, I mean, I raised the question because I remember as I was reading through it, some of it, I thought it was a little outdated. But here's the bigger point.
Mhm.
If we're going to make changes, does it make sense to just do all of it and make it updated and current, as opposed to just the changes that Jefferson recommended, the edits? And I pose that as a question. It's rhetorical.
But I hear I see some head nods. I don't, maybe that's a question for the commission.
Well, I'm not sure if that's our role or if that's staff's role. I mean, the city's role. I don't really know. I'm not suggesting that we go through and do that. But I'm just saying, as a document, does it make sense to update the document so that it reflects, the language of today versus something that was 20 years ago?
Well,
And
I think it goes back to, do we want to do it piecemeal, part by part, or do we want to, it's going to take time. Do we want to take the time and effort to go and do it right the first time, or the second time, or third time? But
Well, if you'd like, what I can do is I can go ask my boss to see what his direction would be. And then maybe I can report back to you, Mr. Link.
Sure.
And say either, nay, let's just stay the course, or yay, let's go ahead and.
Sure.
Okay.
Well,
That
yeah,
works for you?
Yeah, I raised the question rhetorically.
It's a good point.
sure is.
I think it'd be easier to read as a red line, and if you're gonna make changes, you're gonna have to red line it anyway, right? Or retype it out,
Well, there's that actually, so what we're in is this is really technical. We're in InDesign. The old document is in PDF. We've tried, there's no way. So it would look a lot like what it looks right now, which is those red text boxes. And if you guys
That would
are
be-
okay with that, no, I know.
It's
I
not
know, I
great.
see the attorney going,
But also, we're just one body. City council may have their own thoughts about what I just mentioned. And I'm not trying to push this, on them or in their way to suggest, but they may have ideas as well. I mean, they may not want to do that. And that's okay. That's their purview, and they are the deciding body. But I raise it as a question. So when you go back to take it back to your boss, I think council should probably be considered in that discussion as well, and see what they want to do. But
okay, understood.
Can I just ask a general question about these guidelines?
Yes, please.
So this is not an ordinance, right?
Right.
But it's referenced in the ordinances?
is.
As if you are within this overlay district.
Right.
You must
Yes,
comply with
you
the
must.
guidelines?
It's a must, yes.
Okay. Yeah, then it shouldn't be with the red on the side of the paper. It just isn't clean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we can, I can make it red line.
Be easier to read and understand.
Okay, I
Not
understand.
only for us, but I think for, you know, the citizens if they want to come and comment on it.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. We'll do that.
Okay, so if I understood you, we're gonna start at our next meeting with section 3B, is that?
Section
Three.
three.
Part 3, planning?
Yeah, part 3,
Where it
part
says
3.
planning.
Mhm.
Okay, so commissioners, you'll know that's where we're moving
Right.
forward to, from. Okay, and, you know, we'll have a good discussion. I
And
guess.
if you have any questions during the week, you can call or email me. I always say email because I'm not always at my desk, but call or email me, and I'll be happy, and what I'll do is I'll reply all to everybody so that if you've got questions, everybody can see what they are.
Sure. So as it stands, we will have a meeting 2 weeks from tonight, and this is the only thing on the agenda, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. All right?
Did you want to open it up to public comment?
Oh, you know, thank you. Because I know Mr. Larson, he brought a handout for us. Mr. Larson, do you have something you want to?
I'll be very brief. I sent all of you today,
Thank you.
through the commissioner email address, a PowerPoint that will now converted to PDF for each of you, viewing of Peachtree City parking. And just so for introduction, my name's Keith Larson again. I'm a Peachtree City resident, but I'm a bicyclist and an outdoor enthusiast. And in 2014, former Mayor Ms. Fleisch asked me to help Peachtree City get recognized as a bicycle-friendly community. And that was the year that I became officially engaged with city staff and residents in advancing bicycle and pedestrian issues and concerns. And I've been involved in many other pursuits on that. And I engaged Robin several years ago about our challenges with ordinances. Because just like that, you know, what weight of effort does this have to compel a developer to do something to support pedestrians and our bicyclists for coming to their location? The reality is, we have no real ordinance that says, you know, you must have so many bicycle parking spaces. We don't even have one that's really good about golf cart parking. And here we're the golf cart capital, right? I will tell you that I'm a member of the Association of Pedestrian and Bicycle Professionals as an advocate. And so I correspond and listen to the discussions of hundreds of communities across North America, United States and Canada, wrestling with these issues. Most of the communities have now encoded ordinances that require, based on either the use of the facility or square footage, so much allocation of spacing for parking for bicycles, and either characterized as a short-term or long-term use, okay? The briefing that I sent you describes some of those definitions and type uses. So I would offer to you that right now, the current guide that we have, I would give us a grade F, because we're not even following the guide. If you look at the map, we got about 40 parcel lots over on the west side. There's only, what, you know, you count them up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 locations where there's a bicycle rack. And the number indicates the number of bicycles I can attach to that rack based on the way it's designed or its location and proximity to the building or curb. One of them's put on the curb, so you can only put one bike on one side. Okay. So, for example, we just had that big Walmart rebuilt. They pulled a couple millions of permits, right? You know how many bike parking spots are at Walmart? Is 0. They did remember to put in some curbs for parking for golf carts, and they got EV charging, but yet they got a nice path ramp collection of them. And there's people I've seen parking just their bikes and throwing them down on the sidewalk because there's no place to secure it. We could do better. That's what I'm saying. We can do better as a city. And so many people complain about the traffic congestion at 5474, right? The idea behind alternate mode is to encourage people, whether it's by golf cart or e-scooter, e-bike, or many of the other modes that people are using now as alternate, to take a couple of trips a week using the alternate mode, reducing the congestion on the roads. Enjoy our pass system. Enjoy getting out and meeting neighbors. We can do better in the parking. This is the first bite of the apple. Robin just got the contract approved by the city council recently, finally, okay? That will allow her to get all that loose ordinances all cleaned up and make it coherent. And hopefully we'll be having a discussion about some of those forms and functions of alternate mode parking. But there are some specific things in this document I think we need to address to specifically spell out requirements for short-term and long-term parking by type need, and some kind of calibration, because there's fuzziness between development or developer site, or building, is it building site, is it lot? You know, some reasonable basis so they know the calibration. And also, there's been so many changes and advances of good design. Those parking racks that go like this, you see them, the serpentine type things? They won an award for architectural design. They got an F from the bicyclists because you can't attach a bike to it. Okay, but they sell it at their website, you know, and people have bought them because it's award winning. So I'm open to supporting you as a volunteer. So if you have any questions from the materials I sent you, please ask me. I'd be happy to answer them. Have a cup of coffee, share tea, whatever, and we'll get through this. And I really recommend, based on the time of the original document, 2002 to now, that the city staff really needs to have in a friendly document format that they can edit. So Robin, just get them, let you get it digitally converted, and then we'll move on. But we need to do better because we can do better. And our final thought, the Take 5 gas station, he even talked about alternate mode for his employees to get there, right?
Right.
How many parking spots in the overlay zone did he ask for bike parking? How many were on the design? None. Case why we are failing at implementing the overlay. Just say I'm trying to empower you to ask that question too. So, thank you.
Oh, thank you. Point well taken, and we will review your document as well, for sure. All right, commissioners, anything else for the good of the order? Okay, well, we will meet on February 27th at our usual time to further deliberations. If there's nothing else, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
I didn't hear a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we adjourn.
And there was a second.
And there's a second.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposes. We are adjourned. Happy Valentine's Day to all.